When life stops making sense, it doesn't usually happen all at once. It happens quietly, in small moments. A conversation that leaves you unsettled. A phone call that changes everything. A door that closes when you were sure it would open. And suddenly, the life you thought you were living doesn't look like the life in front of you anymore. If that's where you find yourself right now, confused, tired, a little bit lost, you're not the only one. You're not strange. You're not failing. You're human. And in this moment, you are not alone. There are seasons when life just stops making sense. You thought you were doing what was right. You tried to be kind. You tried to be faithful. You tried to make wise choices. But the outcome doesn't match the effort. You pray, and the situation doesn't change. You wait, and the answer doesn't come. You look around, and it feels like everyone else is moving forward. New jobs, new relationships, new chapters. And you feel stuck in the same questions. You start to wake up tired even when you've slept. Not just physically tired, but soul tired. The kind of tired where even small decisions feel heavy. Where your mind keeps spinning trying to understand what went wrong. You might replay conversations in your head. You might go over old choices and wonder what you should have done differently. Maybe you've thought, did I miss something? Did I disappoint God? Is this my fault? There's a particular ache in feeling like you did your best, and it still wasn't enough to protect you from pain. Sometimes it's not one big crisis. Sometimes it's a slow buildup of small disappointments. The job that drains you more than it fulfills you. The relationship that feels distant even when you're in the same room. The spiritual life that feels more like routine than connection. You might still believe in God, but you don't know what to do with the gap between what you believe and what you see. You might find yourself smiling for others and then feeling empty when you're finally alone. You scroll through your phone, looking for something to distract you, but the distraction never really reaches the ache underneath. There's a quiet question that whispers in the background of your days. What am I supposed to do when none of this makes sense anymore? It's a question without a quick answer, and that can be one of the hardest parts. There is a kind of silence that is heavier than noise. The silence after you've prayed the same prayer for the 100th time. The silence after you've poured your heart out, and everything around you looks exactly the same. You may know in your mind that silence does not mean absence, that waiting does not mean abandonment, but your heart still feels the distance. You open your mouth to pray, and the words feel thin. You close your eyes to rest, and your thoughts start racing. You might sit in a quiet room and feel anything but peaceful. There's a tension between what you've been taught to say and what you actually feel. You've heard that you should trust, that you should be strong, that you should just have faith. But the truth is, sometimes faith feels less like strength and more like a small, fragile thread you're not even sure you're still holding. And maybe you've started to wonder if it's okay to feel this way. Is it okay to have questions? Is it okay to not understand? Is it okay to feel angry or disappointed or numb? The answer is yes. You are allowed to be human in front of God. You are allowed to bring your confusion, your unfiltered thoughts, your raw emotions. You are allowed to sit in the tension of not knowing how this part of your story is going to work out. Silence can feel cruel, like a door closed with no explanation. But there is another way to look at silence. Sometimes, silence is the space where we become most honest. When the noise fades, when the easy phrases don't work anymore, when you're too tired to pretend. That's often when the real questions surface. Questions you've been carrying for years. Questions about worth, about love, about purpose, about whether you're really seen. And while it may not feel like it, those questions matter. They are not a sign that you've lost your way. They can be the beginning of a more honest journey. A journey where your relationship with God is not built on pretending you're okay all the time, but on the quiet courage of showing up as you are. Waiting is hard because it forces us to admit how little we control. You can't fast forward through this season. You can't skip to the part where everything suddenly makes sense. You are here, in the middle, in the unfinished chapter, in the unanswered prayer, in the unresolved story. It's uncomfortable. It's vulnerable. And yet, this is also the place where something real can begin to grow. Sometimes, the most honest prayer is not impressive at all. It's not long. It's not eloquent. Sometimes it sounds like, I don't know what to say. I don't know what to do. I don't even know how to talk to you right now. And even that is still a kind of reaching out. You don't have to explain God to trust that He is there. You don't have to understand His timing to be held by His presence. There are things happening in and around you that you cannot see. Small shifts in your heart. Quiet changes in your perspective. Subtle ways you are learning to let go of what you cannot carry. Growth rarely feels like growth when you're in the middle of it. It feels like discomfort, like being stretched, like being asked to live without the guarantees you once relied on. You may not realize it yet, but in this season, you are learning how to live without pretending. You are learning that your worth is not measured by how together you appear. You are learning that being held by God does not always look like getting the outcome you hoped for. Sometimes it looks like having just enough strength to get through today. Sometimes it looks like finding a small moment of calm in the middle of a storm that hasn't passed yet. Sometimes it looks like crying in the dark, and still, somehow, finding the courage to face the morning. Being spiritually alive doesn't always feel like joy. Sometimes it feels like continuing to show up even when joy is not what you feel. There is a quiet kind of faith that doesn't get talked about very much. The faith of those who are exhausted and still whisper a simple, help. The faith of those who are full of questions and still choose to be honest with God about them. The faith of those who don't feel spiritual at all and yet find themselves leaning even slightly toward the possibility that they are still loved. If you are listening to this, and part of you is still here, still listening, still open, even a little, that is not nothing. It may be much more than you realize. You are not expected to fix yourself. You are not expected to force yourself into peace or certainty. You are allowed to be in process. You are allowed to be a work in progress without knowing how the final picture will look. Right now, you might not feel particularly strong. You might feel like you're holding on by the thinnest thread. You might feel broken in places you don't talk about. But being broken does not disqualify you from being loved. Being confused does not push you outside of God's awareness. Feeling distant does not mean you have been abandoned. You are allowed to rest in the simple idea that you are seen exactly as you are and still held. You don't have to solve your life in this moment. You don't have to figure out what comes next. For now, breathe. Feel the air filling your lungs, in and out. Let yourself be here for just a few seconds. No pressure to be anyone else, no pressure to perform, no pressure to pretend this season is easy. If all you can say is, God, I don't understand, but I don't want to walk through this alone, that is enough for now. Trust in seasons like this is not a loud declaration. It's not a confident speech. It's often a quiet decision made again and again in small moments. A decision to keep your heart slightly open instead of fully shutting down. A decision to believe, even without proof you can see, that your story is not over. There will be other chapters. There will be other mornings. There will be days when some of what hurts now hurts a little less. But you don't have to rush there. You can be here, in this in-between place, with your questions, with your fatigue, with your incomplete understanding. And somehow, even here, you are not outside of God's reach. So let this moment be simple. Let it be a small pause in the middle of a crowded life. Let it be a reminder that even when life stops making sense, you are allowed to rest in something bigger than your understanding. You don't have to hold everything together. You don't have to carry this on your own. For now, just breathe. Let yourself feel even a small measure of calm, knowing that you are seen, you are not forgotten, and you are allowed to take this one quiet moment at a time.